All right. Good morning. My name is Jeremy Bowman. I'm the CEO of Rise, and thank you all for going on this journey and experiment with us to do a virtual coaching day for our program participants who are in a couple of the facilities where we still do have class that's happening. We have had some challenges in terms of access to the facilities, but through this technology, we've been able to continue the classes in some of the facilities. We have graduates called peer facilitators that are continuing to help us deploy the program. Yes, Brittany, absolutely. So I'll tell you a little bit about our program and what we're doing, and then we have some staff that'll kind of talk you through the logistics of how this is all going to go. So the program that we do, some of you are familiar with Rise. You volunteered with us in the past. So if you are a returning volunteer and been involved in the past, would you just kind of wave and say, yeah, I've been there before? So we got a bunch of returning volunteers. And then we do have some people that this is their first engagement with Rise. And if that is you, give a quick wave. All right, we got some newbies. I love it. And so the program that we do in the facilities typically takes about 6 or 7 months. And it's focused on character development and job readiness and entrepreneurship. So the participants that you're going to be supporting right now have been working on things like their cover letter and resumes, things getting ready for job opportunities. They're working on personal statements, which is really how you talk about your incarceration in a job interview in a way that puts you in the best position to be successful. And then they all work on business ideation, where they come up with a business plan, and we have a business pitch competition, kind of like Shark Tank, where volunteers come in and judge. And if this was a regular business coaching day, we would be doing things like hugging volunteers. We would be doing some empathy building exercises and really providing a lot of encouragement to the men and women that we serve. And with we don't have the ability now to go into facilities, so we've been trying to be creative about how do we continue to support the reentry planning of folks who are coming back to the community. During a normal time, reentry is crisis, and reentry is very challenging, and employment and housing are barriers for reentry. Right now, with unemployment, more people are filing for unemployment insurance week after week in our state. There's going to be even greater barriers to employment. There's going to be even greater barriers to housing. And it's a really critical time. We are very hopeful that the system paroles more people to take some of the burden off the overcrowded system. We don't know that for sure, but we do have people who are paroling every week. We had a graduate get out this weekend, and as you can imagine, some of the transitional housing facilities are a little bit more skeptical about having people come in without having quarantined first. There has been some community spread in a transitional house in Hastings, and we are lucky to this point that there's not been community spread within the prisons here in Nebraska. But we're seeing it in other states, and we're also seeing other states very proactively getting people out. Iowa's let about 20% of their population out over the last couple of weeks. Ohio, they've had over 2,000 confirmed cases of the virus in the prison system. So, what you're doing is really providing a lot of hope and preparation, and planning for your reentry right now is more critical than ever. And to do that well, and to have a really sound, they work on a reentry plan through the program. And then we have a reentry team led by Erica, who I think is on this call, And we have 4 case managers then that are helping folks in this moment with their reentry plan, helping connect them to housing, transportation, access to food. We launched the Reentry Emergency Fund, where right now we have been helping folks that are experiencing job loss, and we are paying rent for people. We're paying utilities for people. We're paying for food. And that's been through philanthropy from some of you and some of our donors. So we can get into some of the mechanics of, the specifics of what we're going to be doing. And I'll have some of my team jump in there. But I just wanted to kind of give you an overview of this program that's really an inside out model, where we're building trust, and bless you, homeschooling while we do this. So hope there's some grace in that. There's an inside out model that we do where we are getting to know people and building trust and helping them with planning and all the skills they need to be successful on the outside, but then connecting those folks to reentry support when they get out through our staff, through some of our volunteers who are reentry mentors. We launched a reentry mentoring program in January, and we have 16 mentors that have went through training who are assigned folks around reentry, so that there's another person from the community to come alongside folks in their reentry. If that's something that's interesting to you, we're doing a reentry mentor training on April 30th. I'm sure we'll push out some information about that. That'll be about 4 hours. We're going to go really deep into a lot of different aspects of reentry and what that relationship looks like. So we have people who are doing this right now with folks within their first, 30, 60, 90 days upon release. The mentoring program is a 6-month commitment where we're asking people to connect with their mentee once a week. And, obviously that's harder to do in person right now. But we're trying to build a community and a reentry team around people. It takes a village to do reentry well. And, rehabilitation is not just needing to focus on folks coming out, but the community needs to be rehabilitated, which means that the community needs to be more open-minded to providing opportunities, to providing access to, housing and jobs and all the things that we all need to be successful. And that's where a part of our intervention is the community, and that's you. And it's all the volunteers that, do anything from using humanizing language to talk about people who are reentering or who are incarcerated, to coming alongside them as a mentor, as a volunteer, as a coach. And the practical information that you share in their resumes and cover letters is very important. And equally important is just that there's somebody from the community that believes in them and that is encouraging them. And right now, as you can imagine, hope is in very short supply in general, but in the prison system, it's pretty bad. And so what you're going to be doing through this virtual volunteering opportunity is really providing hope and letting people on the inside know that they're not forgotten, that there's a community here that's going to be there for them when they get out, and that there are people out here that care about them and want them to be successful. So I thank you for all of you participating, knowing that we're all uniquely challenged right now in different ways. I know there's people on the call that are quarantining because they've been exposed. I know there's people on the call that have had family members that have been affected by this. And you're all dealing with your own probably challenges around employment, or people that you care about are struggling. And so I'm just really kind of emotionally touched that there's so many of you here that are willing to serve and give back and help, particularly in this moment. So thank you all for being here. I'm going to stop talking for a minute, and just if anybody wants to jump in and make any comments or, have any questions, and then we can move into some of the more kind of logistical components of how this is going to go down. Don't be shy. It's an awkward medium, you know.
I just want to thank all of the volunteers for volunteering to do this. I know that my builders at OCC, they're not able to.
Say who you are.
Oh, this is TJ. I'm TJ Dixon. I am the program associate at OCC and Tecumseh. Currently, I have a cohort that is in session at OCC. But I just wanted to say thank you to all of you, because one of the things that is of huge concern to the builders is being able to have some kind of contact with volunteers. Many of my builders are getting close to the door, and so they're really, really concerned about just being able to connect to people on the outside. So I just really want to thank you for what you're doing. We've had to design a really interesting system, even for me to have any sort of for me to even get any correspondence to the builders. But the OCC is being good to work with us to make sure that we're able to get something to the builders. You guys give them hope, and that is what they need. Many of them are afraid because they're about to get out. Many of them have been cut off from family, friends, and now even from RISE. So I just thank you so much for what you're doing. You just don't know how big a deal it is when they get feedback from you on their resumes, cover letters, personal statements. So my hat's off to you.
Yeah, my name is Chantel Randall, and I'm the volunteer manager at RISE. I've connected with a lot of you, either face-to-face or email or however that looks. I want to echo what TJ said. You know, thank you all so much. We've had over 70 people from the community reach out during this crisis and say, hey, how can we help? And I just think that's amazing. And just so you know how big that is, I've actually had another nonprofit reach out to me and say, hey, how are you guys doing this? How are you keep getting so many new volunteers and people involved? I haven't done a thing. It's you guys. It's our community. So I want to thank you guys for that and for stepping up and thinking of others during this time when things aren't good for any of us. So just my heart goes out to you. As someone who was formerly incarcerated, as many of you know, we are isolated when we are incarcerated, but like TJ said, now they've been cut off from friends and family visits, and programming is stopped, and even RISE family isn't allowed to go in the capacity that we're used to. So what you guys are doing by stepping up and just walking into this craziness with us, and the patience you've given me this last month as I'm trying to give you details as we're working it out, I appreciate you all so very much. We have a very unique community here, and I'm so proud of each one of you and so glad that you're my extended family. So thank you for that. And just a side note, I have over 415 cards that you guys in the community have stepped up and sent in that we will get into the hands of builders as soon as we're able. So thank you so much. I'm lucky enough that they're in my apartment, so I get to go look at them and draw encouragement from them as I'm piling them up. But anyway, you guys, we just love you and we appreciate you, and we couldn't do this without you. Thank you.
Yes. Jeremy, this is Barb Hannon, longtime volunteer. I just think that what you see on the screen is a reflection of what you and your staff have done since the beginning. And obviously, as volunteers, we feel very strongly about what you're doing. And just the fact that Department of Corrections is continuing to work with you and your staff and us to be able to provide this speaks volumes to me, because as you know, a lot of the classes have stopped for now. So I applaud you for your direction and what you're doing, and you're just making it work and finding a way, and here it is. So thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Barb. Our team has been very creative and compassionate and resilient. We have a bunch of staff on the call. I see Brittany and Maria and Erica and Chantal, who you heard from, and Mackenzie, and if I forgot anybody, I don't have all your faces in front of me right now, but just really, how can we continue to help our population? And so thank you for that, Barb. I talk to the director every week, and there's a balance between, I don't feel like the system's doing enough to protect people, but we also run a program in the facilities. And so we need to strike a balance of pushing, but also making sure that we still have that access to do the work, because ultimately that's what's most important, is that we can continue to help our folks who are incarcerated. So any other comments? And this won't take 2 hours, I promise you. This should be, easy breezy, lemon squeezy. But if there's no other comments right now, I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to talk a little bit through the mechanics of this. Can Maria or Amanda, could you just quickly speak to when this is going to start, and a little bit of how the Google Drive works, and some of the more kind of granular pieces of this that you can speak to better than me?
Hi, my name is Maria. I'm the prison program manager, and I am actually going to just say a very quick thank you to our program associates, TJ, Brian, and Amanda, who've done an amazing job with making sure that we're able to continue our programming. I am just coming back from maternity leave, and Amanda has taken a huge leadership role on the logistics and the planning for this, so I am going to hand it over to Amanda real quick.
Hold up that little nugget. Where's she at? I
One
see,
second. 1 second.
I see Maddie in the back,
Yeah.
staring out the window.
It's our first Rise baby, you guys, so we're really excited.
Here she is. Aww. Hi. So anyway, we'll get plenty more time with this one.
All right, that's baby Aiden.
Yeah.
All right, Amanda, I'm going to ask you if you can talk through a little bit of the logistics, and then I'll put up the actual coaching guide, or I could put up the coaching guide now.
Good morning, everybody, and again, thank you so much for all your volunteerism with this. As we go forward through this, Chantal and I have been working really hard on this, along with feedback from some volunteers and our staff. So what we kind of have planned out is you will receive an email from Chantal with builder information. I think you've already received the coaching guide for this, or should be here soon. The middle of the week, you should be receiving an email with the builder information. So that's going to include their resume, their cover letter, their personal statement, and then some information about some business ideations that they've been thinking about for the second part of our class. After that, or with that, you will also receive a link that will have the Google form for it. So you'll open up that Google form and kind of use that side by side with the builder's materials. So as you go through things, there's a section, there's 4 sections in the Google form that have questions on them that have for the resume, the personal statement, cover letter, and the business ideations. So you can go through and fill out your feedback according to those questions. And there's always plenty of space, so if there's extra things that you want to discuss and talk about, there's plenty of room for that. And then when you get to the end, there'll be a place where you can put some words of encouragement for our builders. Typically, we do a sweet sheet, and that is something that we're going to try to make work with this. So you have the ability to leave a comment, some words of encouragement for the builder that you have been assigned. You will get 2 to 3 builders to give feedback to.
Any questions about that part of it? I believe you've received the coaching guide. Is that correct, volunteers? Yep. See some people shaking heads, yes. Okay, I'm gonna just scroll through the coaching guide real quick, and if TJ particularly, or Amanda or Maria want to speak to and answer questions about the specifics of some of these components based on how you're teaching in the classroom, that'd be great. So there's, you know, I don't know how much I need to go into it, but there's some very specific, you know, conversations here about how we do resumes and what we're looking for when reviewing resumes. I know a number of you have done this before at events, and some of you have experience coaching resumes professionally. So I don't know that I need to get into that very much, unless you have specific questions about the resume coaching. Are there any questions about the resume piece?
Jeremy, there is one thing I do want to touch on a little bit with regards to resumes. So with our builders and their resumes, we do encourage them to include work experience that might be while they were incarcerated. We do have some individuals who maybe have big gaps in employment out in the community, or maybe have never had employment out in the community or legal employment out in the community. So you may see some individuals who include work experience while they were incarcerated, and we encourage them to do that because there's a lot of transferable skills. So one thing I do want to highlight is that we are looking for how people talk about transferable skills specifically. We also encourage them to, if they are putting any work experience while they're incarcerated, not to say the prison name, but to say that they were working for the state of Nebraska and then the city. Another thing that I often see with regards to resumes when we're giving some feedback is just to make sure that they're being consistent about including dates. That's just something that not everyone always is aware of or does consistently. So just helping them with some of the really basic things, like making sure the dates are there, that there's a city listed, that NE for Nebraska is capitalized, and that they're in the correct chronological order. So that was just one thing that might be a little bit different from other resumes that you may have worked on.
Jeremy, it's Shelley. If I could ask a couple questions. I think I heard that you'll provide a template resume format. Is that right? And maybe it's in the pack and I just haven't looked at it.
So Shelley, with regards to that, the builders will often be utilizing a kind of a template worksheet that's in their book. And so on the left-hand side, it kind of outlines, you know, here's the header that you might want to put, here's some different things you might want to include. Sometimes builders choose to write it on a piece of paper instead. And we've tried to move away from having a really formatted resume because some people might want to put work experience above education. Some people might want to do education above work experience, just depending on what kinds of things they're looking to highlight.
Okay. And in the resumes that I've looked at in person, I always have questions. I have to probe a little bit. Like, do you have a GED? It's amazing how many times they don't put that on there. And were you a supervisor? Were you a manager? It's amazing how many times they don't include that. But I'm assuming with this process, we will not have the opportunity to hear back from them again. We just give our feedback, ask the questions, give it back to them, and then that's the last exchange we have. Is that correct?
Yes, so that will be the last exchange that you as a volunteer have. Excuse my dog. But the program associates will be handing back all of that feedback to builders, and we'll be working with them on incorporating all of that feedback. So those are great notes to include when you're giving that feedback for them, so that they can continue polishing up that resume.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question, and I apologize if this was already stated before, but will we give the feedback directly on their documents, or will we be doing that like in a separate document?
Yeah, that's a great question, Kara. I know that Amanda's connection was a little bit spotty, but there will be a Google form that has some questions to kind of prompt you. So that way you are answering questions for resume, cover letter, and personal statements on that Google form. So you can put that directly on there. Each builder will have more than one volunteer review their document. And so that's just the way that we're trying to make that more streamlined for everyone.
Thank you.
I also want the volunteers to know too that some of the resumes might be actually typed and some might be written. It depends upon how much access each individual builder will have to technology to be able to type it up. So just expect that you will probably see quite a few written resumes because they are limited on what they have access to. And now that we have COVID going on, there are limitations. It's even tighter. So you may be seeing quite a few written ones, but I've been telling them to please, please, please write legibly. So yes.
Is it helpful, or would you like volunteers to type resumes if they're written? Is that something that you want to see done, TJ, Maria, Amanda?
I think for this purpose, just because of when it is, that would have been helpful had we been able to get them earlier. But right now, my access to, I'm always a week behind with the builders because I'm able to go in on Mondays, pick up stuff from the prior week, and then drop off what I've graded. So there wouldn't be enough time for me to gather things, get them typed, and
DJ, I'm wondering if the volunteers, when they get the paper version, if they
oh, okay.
type them, or if that's helpful, if volunteers are willing to type them.
Sure, then they could just go back to the builders. They would have that typed version and then they'd have feedback on what they have written, so.
Nancy, you're on mute.
Okay. Okay, now can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I also find that as far as education, they forget to note things like their GED, or if they've acquired any skills along the way, blue collars, skilled trades, if they've gotten any certifications, they forget to list those. Also, for some of the young guys, I try to probe a little, did you have any jobs during your teen years? And I don't know if you want that on a resume, but sometimes when they're that young, sometimes that, and I remind them that if they had a good relationship with that boss, perhaps, that could be a link, at least a referral, a reference. So is that okay? Or should I stay out of the teenage years?
I think it could be helpful to mention those types of things because it may be something that they're not thinking about. It's kind of like when we've asked them to make sure they put in their work from being incarcerated, because sometimes they discount a lot of what they have actually done.
Yes.
See something like that, you think that there could possibly be work done in the teenage years, I think it'd be great to ask them that question, to think. After they get back your feedback again, they will be on polishing these things, and if they're getting close to the door, we want to make sure they have as much great experience and all of that on there as possible.
Any other questions about resumes?
Jeremy, once we're done with them, I assume there'll be just an email address that we send them back with our suggestions / corrections / praise.
Can I chime in?
Oh, there you go, Matt.
Okay, so I'm going to simplify it just a little bit for everybody if that was too much. So you're going to be emailed the resume, cover letter, and personal statements. With that, you'll also get a link that is to a Google form. You will fill out that Google form for the resume, personal statement, and cover letter. So they just go synonymously together. At the end of the form, there will be a submit button, and then all of your feedback will come directly to us. So once you fill out that form, there's nothing else that you have to do. If you end up feeling overambitious and want extra credit, you can type out those resumes and things, and then you can email those directly to Chantal, and I put that email in the chat box. but it's going to be super easy. All you have to do is compare your resume, your form, or your documents, and then fill out the form that goes with it. Does that make sense to everybody?
Thank you, Matt.
Yep. Sorry, my picture, I've got too much going on, so I'm not going to put it on the background, but I had a question specifically about encouraging some of the builders who might have had a strong entrepreneurial spirit in the wrong direction to try and take some of those skill sets and translate them to a better basis on their resume as well. I know when I was in their shoes and came out, that was one of the first things I was told. Well, you had a great entrepreneurial spirit, but your marketing skills were put to the wrong ends. And when I started to think about the skill set, not what I did with it, there was quite a bit that I could fill up my resume at that time, and that was a long time ago. But I just wanted to encourage anybody who's struggling with a builder. Maybe is that something we can do? Can we use some of that?
I think that if there's anything that you can see by what you're reading, and there's some skills that are transferable, even if they were used. Say for instance, they have great selling skills or something like that, then I think that that is something that you can say that, you know, it looks like you could potentially have these skill sets, because that may get them to start thinking about how they can also transform their hustle as well. And when I'm able to be with them face to face, I do talk to them about things like that, because some of the guys are excellent marketers. I wish I had those types of marketing skills. They're excellent networkers, things like that, but it just may have been used in a direction that got them incarcerated. So I think that's perfect to point that out.
Yeah, and one thing that I would say too is that sometimes it's hard to see some of those things directly in the resume, but because you are having an opportunity to see their personal statement as well, where they might share more of that information, I think it's a great way to tie together, you know, like, hey, you brought this up in your personal statement, but I didn't see it in your resume or your cover letter. This might be a great thing to add. So that was a good point.
All right, I'm going to move on to personal statements. You can keep the questions coming. So the personal statement, really, this is if this is when they're sitting across from an employer, and the employer says, "Hey, tell me about yourself," or, you know, "Have you ever been arrested?" And how they answer that question can often be the difference between them moving forward in the interview process or being removed as a candidate. And in our experience, folks either don't share their criminal history, or they tend to overshare and they say too much about it. And so there's a very specific way that they have went through 3 iterations from a larger written personal statement down to one that's very concise, that if this were a coaching day in person, you would sit across from them and they would practice this personal statement. And so the key components you're looking for when reviewing these is, you know, really kind of a strong opening that highlights some of their accomplishments. There is some admission of mistake, you know. I have 20 years experience as an electrician. I wish I could say everything of who I am today has always been that way, but I was incarcerated for 7 years during that time, and this is what I did and who I am today and where I'm going. And so there is an admission of a mistake and some context around their criminal history to acknowledge it, not to invoke pity, but to just kind of clearly state, yeah, I was incarcerated. This is how much time I served. This is how I used that time to programs like RISE. I was a leader in the shops, and some specific examples of what that kind of transformation looked like, to let folks know, hey, this is a very different person that's sitting across from me today. And then just kind of a strong closing. And this is why I'll be a great asset for your organization. So that's kind of the context you're looking for. And this is pretty spelled out here in the in the document. It's really an elevator pitch. We have graduates who are in the community that say they use their personal statement 10 or 15 times a day. Whenever they go for a loan or they go, to get housing or in job interviews. So it's a really key component, and just how you tell your story and how you have to continually speak to the fact that you were incarcerated. There's just a really, there's something that can just give you a much better opportunity to be successful in terms of how you frame it and how you talk about it. So we really kind of hone this in on them. And so this is something else that you'll be reviewing and providing feedback for. So there's information in the document about it and the different elements that are included in a really good personal statement. So they've been working hard at those. Are there any questions about personal statement review mechanically or just in general? All right. Will Amanda and Maria, will they be reviewing cover letters or no? I didn't hear if you said that.
Yes, they will also
Yes,
be.
they'll review cover letters.
Okay, do you want to speak to that a little bit and what you're looking for in terms of cover letters?
See if I can make this work a little better. Okay, so when we come to cover letters, living arrangement right now and getting through the kinks. Okay, hopefully that's better.
I don't think we can hear Amanda. Maria, can you hop in? Or TJ?
Yeah, so I'll go ahead and talk about cover letters. So cover letters will be a very simple, we ask them to keep them very short and to kind of walk alongside a resume. What we try to encourage them to do is that your cover letter is what makes your resume kind of come to life and highlights things that you want employers to be able to see in your resume. One thing that I would highlight is just as you are looking at those, making sure that information that is in a cover letter actually lines up correctly with a resume. If in a cover letter someone says, I have 15 years of work experience working in management, and then you look at that resume and you can't find that experience, that's something I would just highlight to them. And this is an opportunity where, again, we talked a little bit about transferable skills. This is a great opportunity to really highlight those transferable skills that then people can look more at a resume to find out where they utilize those skills.
Okay, thank you. And will they be doing business ideation or no?
Yes, I see you nodding, TJ. Do you want to talk about that?
I'll start. So really the context for the business ideation piece, it's a requirement to finish the program and graduate. We know that we do have some of our builders have run businesses before, both legally and in some cases illegally. And so they have a skill set, and coming back right now to, a community where the jobs are going to be hard to come by. If there's opportunities for them to get a side hustle up off the ground very quickly, we want to help them. The context for the types of businesses that we want them to consider, there's a few kind of guideposts that I always mention at the events. One is that they have to be something that can be cash flow positive very quickly, typically within the first 3 months of incorporation. They have to cost very little to start. It's likely that a lot of our folks aren't going to have a lot of access to capital right away. So we say it's got to be less than $100,000. And in many cases, it's going to be much less than that. The business can't be a storefront. you know, something where they're going to have to take out a loan and there's real estate involved. It can't be a nonprofit. We want them putting legal money in their pocket. And it's got to be something that if it were on the front page of the newspaper, it wouldn't embarrass Rise and it wouldn't embarrass them. So what you're going to be seeing are largely service-based businesses, lawn care, car detailing, painting, cleaning services, you know, different hustles where if you just have a little bit of equipment and maybe a vehicle, you can quickly begin your business. So anyway, that's kind of the context. So if somebody's saying, I want to open a restaurant, that's not what we're looking for right away. It's going to be very hard to kind of put that together very quickly for people. So it's really things that are not a lot of cash to start, you know, where you're going to be able to make cash flow relatively quickly. If somebody says, I'm going to develop an app, it's probably not something they're going to be able to do very quickly. We want people to continue to have these dreams, but be realistic about what they actually are going to be able to do, you know, right out of the gate. And so, you know, TJ and Maria, if anybody else wants to add more context to the business ideation piece.
One thing that I'd like to add is that this is a really unique opportunity that we don't get to have in our in-person coaching days. You guys are looking at their business idea and you have access to the internet. So if they want to do a lawn mowing business, usually you kind of have to come up off the top of your head, like anything you know about those. If you have the time, you can do some Google searches about, you know, average pricing and different things. Some people, TJ can speak better to this, some people have access to family members who will look up pricing and different information on the internet for them, others don't. So I am really excited about this opportunity that you guys have the ability to look things up and provide that in your feedback. I think it will really strengthen our builders' pitches. So don't be afraid to say, hey, you know, these are a few competitors that are going to be, you know, directly competing with your business doing the exact same thing. Maybe they don't know that, or, you know, when they were living in Omaha 5-10 years ago, that those businesses weren't open. Pricing has changed. Those things are all really, really helpful feedback for the business idea.
Brittany, would it be okay if we even had some screenshots or something? I can't think of an example what it would be, but maybe we want them to see a couple things from a competitor, or do we just leave it at narrative?
TJ, can you speak to that?
You can do that. Just be careful not to have any of your own personal information on there. I know that I have printed things off from the internet to help them with some research. I just make sure that there's, you know, there's nothing along the margins or anything that says an email address or anything like that that would be a problem with them having there in the facility. The other thing I would say about business ideation is these are you will be seeing their ideas, but they might change their mind once they get feedback. So they may have an idea that they're saying, this is the number one thing that I'm thinking about right now. And then based upon your feedback, they may decide to do something else. So, so just be aware of that. The more you can give your thoughts on that, probably the better it's going to be for them. Because the more they can hear from other people about that, again, the better it will be for them. So, and these are going to be their initial ideas about business, because I think they just went over business ideation last week, and you will be getting their final ideas, I believe, next week. So please be very frank when you're telling them about their ideas.
Yeah, that's a great point, TJ. They're really just beginning that process that they're going to be working the next 3 months on. So you're not going to see a fully formed business plan. This is really ideation. It's really just kind of, hey, what about this? What about that? And so be honest, you know, be forthright about whether you think it's viable or not. and that will give them an opportunity to redirect. So then they do have something that's viable that they'll be working on for the next 3 months as they put their plan together and as they move closer towards their pitch.
You know, if I could offer something, one thing, it seems like it helps during this ideation period. A lot of times I'll ask them, where did you get this idea? And, you know, maybe it's landscaping. Well, I just like plants. But if you probe a little bit, they'll tell a story about planting flowers with their grandmother. Or maybe there was a neighbor who needed help and they were a teenager and they went and it sort of sparked something. Or their grandfather gave them a hat and that's why they want to sell hats. So a lot of times I think it helps if you can ask some probing questions about where did this really come from, and it sort of, they light up and they get a lot more excited and a lot more ideas about their business. Just a thought.
Shelley, I completely agree with that. And I think that's like usually when a business idea becomes something that they actually see themselves doing and not just a project for a class. So that's a great thing to even just say, okay, once you're done reading through all the feedback I give you, just answer these questions for yourself, because obviously we can't have the conversation. And then another couple things that we have going on in the chat box in case people aren't seeing. Amanda Struble said to make sure if you do use screenshots of information, you can't put that in the Google form. So email that to Chantal with the builder's name. So if you're giving me screenshots, say this is for Brittany Burling, please include this, and we'll make sure we get that to them.
I also wanted.
Oh, go ahead.
Hi. I also wanted to note that Jared Anderson put in the chat box, if we can provide, if the volunteers can provide resources like phone numbers for when they get out. And Jeremy, do you want to speak on that?
Yeah, I would say no. Again, this is very early in business ideation. When they get out, if they choose to move forward with their business plan, we work with the Nebraska Business Development Center. We work with the Nebraska Enterprise Fund. There's a lot of those things that will begin to put in place when they get out, if they are moving forward with their their own business. So I probably wouldn't. You can include like, hey, here's some different resources that we can look at when you get out. But I wouldn't put in phone numbers. And when the rubber hits the road and we're working with them on the outside on these things, that's when we'll really start to provide those resources and involve those different organizations. I think the last piece in terms of what you'll be providing is words of encouragement. If you've come to Rise events, we have sweet sheets. They're kind of like that yearbook page where you write encouraging words, and they're kind of that pretty colored page that both volunteers and builders exchange with one another. There'll be an opportunity for you to provide some words of encouragement within the context of the documents. I'll let somebody else speak to that because I don't know all the logistics of that. I just ask that you don't make any promises about employment, or you don't put any personal information. We just have to be very careful with what we're providing and sending into facilities. So I think some general words of encouragement, your business idea is really great. I'd love to see it, see you work on that. Good work on your resume. Hang in there. These are tough times. Just, kind of more general encouragement, but not like, call me when you get out and I'll help you with this, or, I can get you a job here. We just don't want to make any promises right now, and certainly not through, we want to be careful so we can continue doing this type of thing, and that there's not barriers to further access our participants. And if somebody wants to talk about how we're going to do that specifically, that'd be great.
I can do that. So you're gonna, as Mackenzie very clearly explained everything, thank you, Matt. Once you hit submit, that'll go to us. On the back end, we will be taking the words of encouragement and we're gonna actually copy and paste them onto sweet sheets. So they're going to be printed off on the colored paper in like a handwritten font. We're going to try and make it as similar to a business coaching day as we can. So if you are a returning volunteer, you know what that's like. You can just write your words of encouragement as you would at the end of a coaching round. It's really helpful when you do just encourage them and, hey, that's such a creative business idea, or things like Jeremy said, but also make sure we're keeping it general enough that it's not going to get flagged to where we couldn't give those to builders. If it's too specific, if it contains personal things, then usually they won't let us give those out. But yeah, we'll be handing those out in a packet with all of your feedback. And that is usually something that they really value and hold on to, especially I think when they won't be getting a lot of the face-to-face interactions. That'll be a great source of encouragement for them. And then Mackenzie, do you want to speak on what you just put in the chat box in case anyone can't see that in another phone?
Sure. I just wanted to kind of elaborate on why we don't want to make promises. We all know what it feels like to have promises made to us, but ones that aren't kept. And when people are working on trust, it's really important for us to just be people that they can trust. So make your promises to Rise. Don't make promises to builders, just give them encouragement. And Barb just asked if we can include our name, like mine is Believing Barb. Does somebody, TJ or Amanda, Jeremy, does anybody want to speak on that?
Yes, so the answer to that is you can sign off using first names. And with Barb, her little example of Believing Barb, when we have our in-person events, we often do like a positive adjective that starts with the same first letter as your first name. So for Barb, she used Believing Barb. Jeremy is often Jumpin' Jeremy. So you are welcome to sign off with your first name, or if you want to do something jumpy or believing or positive that kind of goes with your name, you are welcome to do that as well.
There's a question about the Google form too.
Yeah, so the words of encouragement will be the last little field on the Google form, so you can type it directly in there, and we'll worry about the rest on our end. And then just to highlight, Amanda Struble up in the chat a little bit higher up said, expect to start receiving emails tomorrow with the Google form and the builder work, and we'll need those back by April 29th. So you have about a week to fill those out. And if you have any questions, you can feel free to reach out to Chantal, and she can answer those, or we can work together and answer any questions you have. But that's kind of the timeline, so you guys know what to expect.
Any last questions about how this is going to go down?
Since we have had such a good response from you guys, some of you may only receive 2 builders information and not 3. And that is not anything personal or a mistake. That is just because we have had such a huge response, which is awesome. And we want to make sure that we assign work to everyone who volunteered. So if you only get 2, just know that that's because you guys are awesome and so many of you have reached out, and that's a little less you'll have to do.
It's a question about the Google Forms and if you have to save them or if they're auto-saved.
From what I understand, the Google Forms will need to be completed in one shot. So sit when you're committed.
Yes, I would try to do it in one sitting. If you do need to navigate away from it or step away from your computer, just don't close the window, and you can finish typing it out. The important thing though is that you will scroll to the bottom and there is a button that says submit, and then you will get a screen that says your responses have been submitted, so that way you know that everything has gone through.
If you have problems with your form or you have questions, you can email Chantal or Amanda, and I will drop those email addresses in the chat box.
Any other questions? Well, I just want to thank you all for your time. You're getting an hour back. Thanks for committing to helping our builders with this. There'll be information forthcoming. And we're just grateful for this community and all your support. If there's ways that RISE can support you in any way, any of our staff, I know that we're in this together. We want to be helpful to you. So don't hesitate to reach out. We did launch a Rancher Emergency Fund, like I mentioned earlier. If that's something you or others are interested in supporting, that's on our website. And that's paying rent for people right now, utilities, food, just basic needs as folks are reentering and facing a lot of barriers. And we're still kind of figuring out how we're going to do a business pitch competition and graduation. We just asked for a little time on that. We're kind of taking things as they come. Hopefully we'll be able to do something like that in person. But if we can't, we'll figure out another way to engage the volunteer community and make it meaningful for the folks that are working hard and going through the program. So with that, enjoy your day and hang in there. Things are tough. So we're here for you. Holler if you need us, and take care. Thank you.